Hey, Sarah, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Oh my goodness, yes, Sarah Crow. I work in healthcare technologies, selling to health IT into large health systems. I live in Bozeman, Montana. One of the benefits of COVID, I guess, is that we're all digital now. So really, the opportunity to do what I love to do in a place that's
Beautiful.
beautiful and snowy right now.
Yeah, you thought you'd have to move, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And why sales? Looks like you studied marketing and
Yes, completely by accident, by chance, honestly. Like like you said,
wasn't well thought out.
it wasn't at all. I started in marketing, in PR, advertising agencies, and then it was by chance. I was working at an organization. One of the top salespeople left, and they needed somebody to kind of fill in, and so I started dabbling and fell in love.
Yeah.
And I'll never go back.
What'd you like about it?
There's something that is like so intriguing, and the relationships and the um you never know what your day is going to be, right? There's nothing that is the same. It's exciting. And that chase I love. And so yeah, it's a
It's kind
good
of,
space.
because it's almost the opposite of marketing a lot of ways. Because marketing, you do a lot of things and you're not really sure what's working.
Well, and in theory, marketing is driving sales, right? That's the whole point,
Hopefully, yeah.
ideally, right? And so to actually be on the forefront, to be kind of, that almost gatekeeper into an organization where you're, earning this trust. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
So the first year, was it awkward? Was it a big adjustment?
It honestly wasn't.
No.
Uh, no,
You were
it
natural?
wasn't. I think that, my husband is in sales, and
Okay.
so I saw him
Yeah, you get a
a
sense of
lot.
what it was all about.
Yeah, exactly. And, being relational is very important to me. And I'm more of, there's definitely different kinds of sellers, and I'm much more of a relational seller. And so I was able to kind of, and that's one of the things that I like about it too. Instead of kind of thinking about the organization with marketing and how you kind of drive the perception externally, with sales, I get to speak with so many different people and
Yeah.
understand their problems and how we can provide value. That I really love, that side of it.
Yeah, because it's not academic. It's like, feet on the street, literally you're the front soldiers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And did you miss marketing at all?
No. Is that bad? No, I mean, I still help with marketing in my current organization where I can. There's still that side of me that
Yeah.
does, love a lot of what marketing has to offer. But I, I'm in the right space for me.
And how about as far as like the rejection and the ups and the downs? Marketing's much more of kind of a flywheel, campaign oriented, calendar oriented.
Yeah. Well, hearing no is definitely not something that I like. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Um, but I have three sons, and I don't know. It doesn't
You
bother
say no a
me.
lot then.
I say no a lot. I'm used to that. But also, I think that there's when you hearing no is not always a bad thing, right? Oftentimes when you're on the phone, when you're hearing no, it's not no to you. It's no, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
No, I don't have the bandwidth. And those are I can come up with solutions to those no's. So I don't always see no as being a bad thing. And sometimes it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
So the rejection, yes, sometimes there's the hard rejection that you can't work around, and that's not fun, but you get back on your feet and you move forward.
Yeah. And how about as far as like the control over your income? Was that a big plus for you?
I mean, absolutely. Right. I mean, that's sales. You go into these organizations, and gosh, I remember in marketing at one of the first companies, and I'm watching these salespeople crush it. Right. And part of me was like, why? why are you guys making so much money? Like, we're helping you. We're
Right.
providing you with
We
content.
got
We're
you the
doing,
leads.
yes, exactly.
All you had to do was take the order.
Yes. And then as soon as I got to sales, I'm like, got it. This is
I
so hard. You're traveling all the time. The relationship aspect is so, it's because it's different every day,
Yeah.
because you're working with people externally, it just changes the dynamic so much. And you have to be good at what you do to succeed, right? There's no just kind of a desk job where every day I'm kind of just, creating content. And I have to be good for my company to succeed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that I'm
Awesome.
I'm out. So there's definitely that benefit.
How about like what I noticed? Like I went from engineering to pre-sales to sales, and how you got treated was night and day. Because
Uh-huh.
as an engineer and a pre-sales, you got treated great. Then, then you all of a sudden you're working for the same person and you're not getting the love and feeling anymore.
Yeah, yeah. That's so interesting that you say that. I think that there's definitely a stigma, right, to the sales title, right?
Yeah.
Like when I go into conversations, it's people are introducing themselves and giving their titles, and I'm always like, I'm the sidekick. I'm the relationship person. I
Yeah.
never lead with a title because I think immediately people have this intrinsic reaction that's like, oh, they're trying to push something on me that I don't need or I don't want,
Yeah.
right? Instead of me earning that trust first. So there's absolutely that. I have to say though, the organization that I'm working with now is sales forward. So we as a sales organization get treated wonderfully. So I have to say that I'm in the right spot.
Yeah. And what causes that? Is it founded by a salesperson or led by someone who came out of
one
sales?
one of the founders is a salesperson, one
Yeah.
is an engineer product, so there is definitely, one was more of a consultant, so the relational aspect is understood and how important that is to drive growth.
And that is critical for salespeople. And a lot of companies, I've been in companies where it was like uh, salespeople were the necessary evil.
Yeah,
Didn't get equity. Only the engineers got equity. You get commission, you don't get equity. And you're like, who's out there creating a market for your product?
well, and outside of that, the coolest part about being in sales is that I can see a direct impact in what the
Yes.
company's valuation is, right? For every, it's, if we're kind of thinking about, a 10x on SaaS, right? From a valuation standpoint, I can see, every $100,000 that I bring in is another million to you.
The
What does
market
that
value.
mean, right?
Yeah.
So that I love seeing that too. Like, how can I help drive that growth of the organization and the value?
Yeah. I had that conversation with the CEO early in my career. We had
You-
just closed a big deal. And he goes, "You're going to make more than me this year." I go, "Yeah, maybe W-2, but not on top line." And I
exactly.
had to explain it to him. And he was
I,
like, "Oh, I guess."
you're like, wait a second.
Right.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean,
This is a car to me, but it's a house to you.
right, right, exactly. So I love being able to see that, right? Because yes, there's the deals that you bring in and you can see that ARR, which is wonderful. But if you actually take a bigger picture look at what that means to the organization, what that means to the market, um, that that's impactful.
You mentioned trust. How do you build trust? Do you have a particular process or style?
I think that this does come with the relational aspect to how I sell. I kind of look at selling and why I believe that I'm a great seller, kind of three different aspects, 2 points, and then something that kind of ties it all together. So the first is passion. Like, of course, you're going to hear that from sellers, right? The first is passion, but
But it's passion for what, though?
exactly. So it's not just passion for selling, it's passion for what you're selling.
Yeah.
It's passion for what you do, right? Like right now, I have this distinct opportunity to work for an organization where I believe in the mission and vision. I believe in the leadership. I believe in the product that we're selling and the value that it brings, right? So I'm just you can tell when a seller doesn't believe in what they do. Like maybe it's an easy sell, maybe every organization needs it, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm just doing what I have to do, checking boxes.
Yeah.
I truly, I have a passion for what I do. So I think there's that side of it.
Yep.
And that helps drive the trust, right?
It
But then
comes
the
through.
other,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then the other point would be empathy, right? Like I want to understand who I'm speaking to. I want to be able to solve their problems. I want to be curious about those problems, right? I want to, how can we, make that better? How can the flexibility of my platform make it so that you are better at your job, so that your boss looks at you and says, you did this right? Right? How can I build that trust with, that passion and with that empathy? I think that those are kind of two of the biggest
Yeah.
pieces to drive the trust. And then that's from the prospect. Driving trust within the organization is that, what ties both of those together for me is I can always be better.
There you
And,
go.
that's something that, like, as soon as the sale is done, there's another one, right? And I can continue that relationship because it's important, and that's how I am, this relational person. But I think that I can always improve. I can always be learning, and every deal will help kind of drive insight towards the next one, if
I
that
think
makes sense.
that's a great mindset, that growth mindset. And how can I become better, which has the assumption I'm not perfect.
Yes, far from it,
Right.
right?
Because the question I always asked myself about a deal is, what don't I know? Which
Yeah,
assumed I didn't know it all,
exactly.
which spurs that curiosity.
hmm Exactly. Because we can't know it all, right? I
Of
mean,
course
we can
not.
we can always try to put, the shoes on of the prospect, but we don't know what's happening internally. We can get to the
Right.
table and suddenly something drops, and you've got your point of contact, and you understand the path and the process, and what it typically takes to get something to the finish line from their organization. You drill into those to understand so that you don't have that many obstacles.
Yeah.
But every organization is different.
Right.
So
And we're assuming that they even know.
exactly,
And it's our
exactly.
jobs to kind of walk them through that process, to have them think about the alternatives, because they're probably not doing that. They,
hmm
they give you some feedback, they tell you what they like, they tell you what they don't like. But how does it compare to doing nothing? How you're doing it today? How you're doing it a different way?
Yeah.
Let's dig into that.
Well, and I think that that's also why right now we've all had this big shock with COVID.
Yeah.
And we've all had to learn that something can drop in a second, right? So we need to be able to adjust to that,
Yeah.
right? We have to be able to kind of understand that things aren't always going to be the same. Budgets aren't always going to be the same. Suddenly, I mean, I'm working with health systems. They were closed for months, so it's understanding that the change happens and how you navigate around that and how you adjust, whether that's the organization that I'm selling to or my organization. That's very, very important to kind of, if you can see around the corners as much as possible, um, that's that's where you can succeed.
Yeah. And that's hard. And we try and think that we can predict everything.
Yeah. I mean, we're in sales,
Right.
Brian. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's hard. And how did you come up with those three elements? Was this kind of a reflective process? Did you notice it in other people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's, as you kind of grow in your career and you have people who come and ask for advice, or, even speaking with my husband, looking at what he does, and, kind of self-reflection is very important. Why didn't I do a good job here? How could have I improved? And then kind of why am I so passionate about what I do? There's kind of these different aspects. For me, health IT, I had brain surgery 3 years ago,
Oh, so it's
and
personal.
it's personal.
Yeah.
And we're all patients at some point. And so
Some
I have,
point.
at some point we are, right? Um, and so I do have this piece that's driving that, right? And that's kind of the easy piece with the passion
Yeah.
that I've found. And then the empathy is really the being relational. And then, I mean, the can always be better is just who I am. I'm just competitive.
Yeah.
It just, that's part of
Where's
me.
that come from?
I was the third born.
There you go. Uh,
I
third of,
third, I had a brother and then a sister. And I love sports, played
yeah,
sports my
there you
whole
go.
life. And I like winning.
Yes.
I don't like being told no. But to win, you have to be strategic. You have to kind of again, see around corners. You have to think about things, and you have to think about somebody else. That's where I think a lot of salespeople miss.
That's
Um,
natural. Yeah.
yeah.
Because that empathy, what I've kind of learned is that the deepest part, or the most effective part, is this thing called theory of mind. It's your ability to see the world the way the other person sees it.
Yeah.
And as a mother, you've probably seen this with kids. It's like if they cover their eyes, they think you can't see them
Uh-huh.
just because they can't see you.
Yeah. Yes, that makes sense.
Right. And this is kind of like one of the more advanced things that nobody talks about. And I always used to ask my reps, like, if you were them, what would you do and why?
Yes.
And they get, and I put them into a trance. They couldn't. It was like I spoke Swahili to them.
Yeah, well, and that's one thing that I sat down with a lot of our SDRs the other day, and because I got an email from one of them, an example email, and I responded and I said, "Would you respond to this?" Well, maybe not. And I'm like, so that's the thing that we always need to focus on, and that we as humans innately, I mean, even right now, Brian, what do we as humans love to talk about? Ourselves.
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
That, and it won't change, right? We all have some narcissist in us. We love to talk about ourselves. So I'm like, in order to have a conversation with someone, sending out a blanket email, I mean, I'm going to ignore that all day long. You research that person, you tell them how amazing they are, you understand what they want, what will help them be better. You could send out 1,000 emails a day, but if you send one, right? If you send one that you researched and you really got to know that person, that's when you're going to have a better response rate.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to teach is you've got to think about why would somebody respond to you, right?
Yes.
Because they want to hear about
Talk
themselves.
about themselves, right? Not
Exactly.
you and your product.
Exactly.
And what's every
Exactly.
cold call sound like? This is who I am. This is what we do. This is why it's so incredibly crazy good.
Me, 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 me.
Yeah. And the other person's like, I don't know what it is. I don't know why I care. Can I please
Exactly.
leave?
Exactly. Exactly. So if you can tie it back to,
Yes.
an article that you've read, a quote that you have, you said this and it really resonated with me because of XYZ. I think that, really helps people. Again, this is part of that trust is, okay, this person took some time,
Yeah.
right? In my career, I've had one SDR reach out to me having looked at my LinkedIn. One.
Yeah. And you would think it's so obvious, but it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
Because I get pitched guests all the time.
Hmm.
And, one person just put a review of the podcast, a 5-star, took a picture of it, and just said, I'm not sure if this person's a match or not. Could you tell me if they are or not? If they're not, why? It's a give,
Yep.
right? And it's just not some blanket thing of yet another Amazon seller who just wants, free PR.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a mentality. If we can change that, and if we can change that early in careers, if we can change that.
Yeah. I think it's the hard part of it is innate to talk about ourselves, but
Mhm,
but it's the same for the other person too.
mhm, exactly.
Can you change? Is it easy to change that?
Oh, I think you can change process,
Yeah.
right? I think you can change process early in those when you are just kind of hustling, trying to get meetings and whatnot. I think you can change people's process and help them understand. It also has to come from leadership of these teams.
Yes.
So often it has been numbers, 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 dials, dials, dials. If it's not quality, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's counter effective because people get burnt out. If you have to do 50 dials, you can't do any research. You can't find out what the person cares about.
Exactly.
And
Well, and then
managers were raised on this mentality.
yeah. Well, and then these organizations that you've been targeting become numb to you and numb to your
That's
brand,
right.
right? You only have so many opportunities to get that great first impression, right? And so if you're constantly hitting people with things that is just not useful, then suddenly the entire brand that comes with the next sales rep too is done to them.
Yeah.
That opportunity needs to start earlier where you are engaging in a way that is productive, and that again provides value.
Because so much of what we sell requires a conversation, not a pitch or not a commercial.
Yep, exactly.
You know, I'm sure what you sell requires a conversation.
It absolutely does. Yeah, it absolutely does. It requires so many conversations. I mean, I'm in healthcare. It's not like we're moving quickly over here. So yes, I mean, getting that individual on the phone for the first time is, I mean, that's the spot. That's the starting spot, and that is so vital to the process that we can't have so many misses before that happens. Even if you do suddenly get somebody on, they already have a bad taste in their mouth.
Yeah.
So
And when they see your caller ID come up or your voicemail, do they want to listen to it?
exactly.
Even if they don't have to,
Yeah.
because they know you have their best interest in mind, which
Hmm.
is trust.
That's the trust.
Yeah.
Somebody can like me all day long,
Right. And that's
but they're
part
not
of
gonna.
it. You got to
Yes,
get to trust.
you have to earn that trust. People can buy from a company, maybe, but they're really, and this is why I love selling, because I feel like I'm that gatekeeper. you know Trust, integrity, honesty, that means a lot to me. I want to, when I have these conversations with an organization and I'm speaking to what we can do to provide this value, we have to, as an organization, be able to support that,
Yes.
because I'm not gatekeeper to the trust of everything that's going to flow from. It's not just a deal, right? This is a partnership. These become people who then speak to other people. In my head, every single deal should turn into 4 or 5 partnerships, right? Because they should go out and they should tell other organizations. So that is so important to me. And that's why I love this kind of being at the forefront of saying, okay, you can trust me in this organization because this is the value that we provide. And we are going to make sure that we do provide that value.
And give us a sense of what your company does and how complex it is for the customer to buy it and change it and implement it.
Yeah. So we do an experience management platform, which is really real-time text messages.
Okay.
So we can, think about consumers from every level, from the start to their interaction with your company to the finish. We can provide a lot of value as consumers. So why aren't organizations taking that feedback and making changes, right?
Okay.
So that's what we sell, is the ability for you as an organization to dig into these areas of unknown, to understand where, gaps and expectations have been, and then fill those gaps with quality process that you've defined with
Oh,
great data.
that sounds like such an easy sale.
Right? Honestly, I mean, every organization needs it.
Right. But on their end, saying it's a great idea is easy.
Yes.
Implementing it is
It
a journey.
is a journey, but it also, that the nice thing is the platform that is so flexible. So we can start with one use case, one team that really is seeing an issue that they want to solve it. Let's start there. right? And then the integration aspect is a very easy lift from an IT perspective. So
Yeah.
that's not an obstacle that we have. So we can kind of get this data feed moving easily. So it really is, if we can find that, individual who has a problem and wants to figure out how to be better, that's where we succeed.
And where do you start within an organization? Is there a particular persona that has this problem to solve?
Oh, it definitely depends on the organization.
Yeah.
There's experience
Yeah.
teams. Within healthcare, there's experience teams. Outside of healthcare, most organizations, the from hiring up is all about experience, right? They
Yeah.
have to focus on that. I mean, consumerism. So it just kind of depends. There's chief experience officers, there's chief marketing officers who really need to help drive that brand awareness and that NPS.
Yeah.
Um, Operations, right? Ops wants to say, okay, I want to understand why aren't getting a great score here. I want to understand why people aren't telling their friends to come here. Let's figure out that process. So there's quite a few different personas that I can tackle, which is beneficial. Also different, right? Selling to somebody in HR is going to be
Yeah.
very
Very
different
different than,
than selling to ops.
yeah.
So those are kind of two different mindsets that I have to go about when I'm having these conversations as well.
And have you come up with like an acid test to differentiate people who are curious about it versus who have a real business interest in it?
Oh my goodness. I mean, to qualify a conversation is, and that depends on the size of the organization too,
Yeah.
right? I mean, depending upon that size, how many obstacles you're going to hit along the way, how many
Yeah.
people have to be in that room and who have to sign that line, right? So there's definitely, when I'm looking at the size of different organizations, who I'm able to get that conversation with to start, at what level they are. Um, I, it definitely, it's all very variable,
Yeah.
if you will.
And is it typically an event causes it, or somebody's passionate about their NPS score or their reputation, or they're a
Yeah,
major shareholder?
yeah, usually when I'm targeting and reaching out to people, it's those people who are innovative, right? Those people who are willing to kind of take a chance, who want to do something different.
Yeah.
There's those individuals, again, the experience, those people. But right now, right, with COVID, there is this distinct opportunity for change, right? And there's this distinct opportunity for gaining brand loyalty. Everyone has been holed up for months, not shopping, maybe some online, not going out, not going to the doctor, right? So if I've gone to a couple different doctors, an urgent care here, the health system down the street, I mean, when I have to go back, I'm most likely going to go back to somebody who's been engaging with me,
Yes.
asking how I'm doing, not waiting until after an encounter happens, but who's been letting me know the status of the world, in the meantime. So, right now, in every vertical, definitely a distinct opportunity to build awareness, build loyalty
Yeah.
by engaging with people throughout their entire life cycle with your organization.
And I got to believe it's much stickier than email.
Oh my goodness, much
Yeah.
stickier. And we all always have our cell phones in
Right.
front of us. Unfortunately, but it's the path of the world. I mean, I get emails all day long, and it's just noise. I'm not going to go and check out an email to,
Fill out a
it's
survey.
exactly. And that's what this is, why it's beneficial. It's not just, a survey. It's like, help me define your preferences so that next time you're here, I can manage around that. I
Yeah.
can define a process and an experience around what matters to you as a person, and then looking at the entire population of constituents, what
Yeah.
matters most to them. So that right now there's an opportunity for so many organizations to, instead of being passive, I think a lot of organizations they watch social media to see if they have a bad review. They
Well,
wait until somebody's in the store. Why aren't you engaging before?
Right. Because by the time they go on to Google or Yelp, who goes on there? Either people who are really into reviews or people who are mad,
Exactly.
who want
Exactly.
revenge
Yes.
and don't
Yes.
have the guts to call the manager. Just
Exactly.
wants to put up like, I don't believe they did this to me.
Yeah.
I
So
waited 2.5 minutes to get in there.
it was awful.
Think I
But
have all
yes,
day?
exactly. I mean, you're exactly right. Why are
Yeah.
we waiting until somebody's mad? Why don't we help one, define the process so that they aren't mad to
Yeah.
begin with? But then, even in the moment, why aren't we recovering that in real time? Why aren't we
Yes.
giving them an
Fix it
opportunity? Yes. So
before
there's
it
just,
goes, completely
yeah.
off the rails.
Yes. And, so many of these organizations offer up some sort of a solution that is like,
Yeah.
we can make sure that we're asking people questions after, but that's too late. It's too late.
Right.
It needs to be before, during, and after.
Yeah. Cool. This has been a great conversation. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Yes, on LinkedIn, Sarah C. Cat Crow. My email, sarah.crow@feedtrail.com. And yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love to connect.
And what's your territory in case somebody out there wants to buy your product?
I am West Coast. Bozeman, Montana. I'm the West Coast.